Welcome to the Contagious Code podcast, where we dive deep into code, learn practical skills, celebrate the beauty of engineering, and eliminate imposter syndrome.
I am Tejas Kumar, and I've been building on the web for over 20 years at places like Vercel, Spotify, Zeta, and more. Today, my guest is Aymen Ben Amor. Aymen is the organizer of the Belgium JS community, also called BeJS. Aymen, along with his team, also organizes conferences like BeJS, React Brussels, React Paris, and most recently, React Africa. Aymen, in this episode, dives deep on what it takes to organize a conference in the React ecosystem and with JavaScript. He goes into detail about the costs of finding venues, the time constraints, and also his plan for the day of the conference. Part of my experience with him was during a conference day. I was there and I went to Ayman and I said, "How are you feeling?" And he said, "Honestly, if everything fails, I don't care. I don't care anymore." And he says it's because I've done my best leading up to this moment. So if things fall apart, it's an act of God, and so be it. I've done my part. And, this is just one of the many insights that he shares in an episode like this. Outside of organizing so many conferences, Ayman is also an engineer. He builds things with React for clients as part of his company, his consultancy called B2A. And we talk about that. We talk about his choices and how he's deciding to choose technologies today, whether React or otherwise. And we explore the question about React fatigue. Do you think the industry is moving away from React, or React still has a prominent place and will continue to have one? So this discussion, whether you're interested in what it takes to organize 4 conferences a year, or what it takes to choose the right technology, or anything in between, really this episode is for you. Now, I'd like to offer this to all of you at no cost. And the way we can do that is through sponsors and partners, because this is very much separate to my day job. Let's take a moment to acknowledge them. The Contagious Code podcast is partnered with Code Crafters. Code Crafters makes it very easy to get really good at code and developer tools by having you implement them from scratch. The way I teach and the way Code Crafters teaches is you pick a programming language like Python or TypeScript, and you pick a tool like Git or Docker or Redis, and you use the programming language to implement the tool from scratch. By doing this, you get better at the tool because you understand its underlying mechanisms and how it works, and you get better at the language that you choose. It's a great way to learn 2 things at the same time. They have a generous free tier. If you'd like to start paying, you can get up to 40% off using the link in the show notes. That's tej.as/codecrafters. The Contagious Code podcast is also partnered with React Africa and React Paris. React Africa is happening in actually a week, and React Paris is happening next year, and both are organized by Aymen. So this is a very special episode. If you'd like to attend any of those conferences for free, share this episode on social media and say you'd like to do so, and you'll enter a raffle to do exactly that. Thank you for sticking around. Now for my discussion with Aymen Ben Amor. Aymen Ben Amor, welcome.
Hi, Tejas. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. Your conference has been so enjoyable to me. I've spoken there. I actually, at this point, I've spoken at every single conference you've organized, which is such an honor. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about the BeJS, React Brussels, React Paris, all the conferences. And maybe we can get some type of origin story, because for me, I started speaking at BeJS Conf in 2022. It came out of nowhere, right? And so I think, part of this episode, I'd love to teach people together how to, if they're thinking about starting a conference, maybe for the first time, or if they're maybe running one and struggling to keep it going, how to do it well. And I think you do it very well. So with all of that, maybe we can start with an introduction to yourself, and where did BeJS Conf even come from?
Yeah, okay, sure. Basically, so I'm Ayman. I'm a front-end developer at my main job. I work as a consultant, so I have different clients, etc. And I founded BeJS in 2019, I think, around November 2019. Basically, what happened is that I'm originally from Tunisia, and in Tunisia, we don't have that many conferences, especially for the JavaScript ecosystem. So when I arrived in Belgium around 11 years ago, I wasn't really into conferences. For me, it wasn't something that was really interesting for me. And so for my first conference, a colleague of mine had to basically drag me to that conference. And the reason why I wasn't interested is because I've never been to one. So for me, it was just people talking about some technologies, you know. Luckily, that first conference was at the time called React Amsterdam, which is now called React Summit. And so for me, it was amazing because it was more close to a concert or a festival than to an actual tech conference. It was like people going on stage like rock stars, and a lot of fun, a lot of networking, a lot of people being nice, helping each other, discussing different topics, etc. So I was super impressed. Basically, when I went back to Belgium, I was like, okay, Brussels is not that different from Amsterdam, especially in terms of weather. But I, I was like, yeah, let's see if there are some communities here or events that I can attend. And so I checked, but there weren't any events happening. There were no JavaScript conferences. There was a community that was doing meetups at the time, but it was kind of a training company. So their events were mainly like, hey, this is an intro to some technology. If you want to have the full thing, subscribe to our training. So
Right.
I didn't really like that at the time. So I said like, yeah, okay, let me try to start something. And also at that time, I was also thinking about how it changed completely my way of looking at conferences, the fact that I went to one. So being from Tunisia, and since there was no conferences in Tunisia, I was like, okay, so I will start here, but the main goal and the long-term goal is always to bring back these kind of conferences to our countries, like Tunisia, Morocco, where people actually don't go because there isn't that many conferences. And so I was lucky because being a consultant, I had a lot of network and a lot of friends in companies, consulting companies. And so I just talked to one of them, and they were okay to host. And the first two meetups were around 50 people. So that was amazing. But then something happened, COVID. And we got stuck at home. But actually, I saw that as an opportunity. It was really beneficial for us because we were a very small local meetup. So we were inviting local speakers, attendees were only local. And that's when everyone started doing online events and becoming all the time online. And I took that opportunity and said, okay, now I can actually invite people that I wouldn't be able to pay to come to the meetup. So I started inviting popular speakers that came to talk at the meetups online, and it worked well. It wasn't costing that much money, so I said, okay, we can do an online conference. And so I did the first React Brussels 2021 fully online, and it was a massive hit. Like we had around 300 people online. People really liked the format, the atmosphere, etc. And it kind of proved my idea that it's something that is very interesting for people. And so that's how I decided, okay, so let's now try, now that COVID is over, let's try to have one conference in person. And that's how BeJS became few in-person conferences.
Wow. Now that COVID is over, that must have been so hard to decide, right? Because like it didn't. I still don't know if, like, there's a lot of people who will say COVID's still not over. So I guess you had to find this moment where you were like, okay, I think, and it had to have been a guess, and it turns out that guess was a very good one. I didn't know that React Brussels happened online before, and I find this really interesting that it was such a big hit because in my bubble, right, people tend to not like online conferences. But at the same time, I know a lot of people do like it because it makes it accessible. They don't have to buy plane tickets. They don't have to travel. They can just show up. Can you elaborate maybe on your experience on what made it a hit? Was it that? What was the makeup of people? Was it, I imagine it was very diverse because it was like literally the whole world has access to this online thing instead of like one localized area.
Yeah. So it was very diverse, but in reality, there were still most of the people coming from Europe, probably because the costs involved. I mean, 90 euros in Europe is not the same as 90 euros in Tunisia, or people don't even have access to euros in a country like Tunisia, for example. Like it's pretty difficult to buy tickets for foreigners conferences, even if they are online. So that's why we had mainly people from Europe. We had few because we always have scholarship programs and try to give away free tickets, etc. So we had still few people, but it was mainly from people from Europe. The reason why I think it was a hit is because I invited the most popular speakers at the time. Brendan Bayer was there, and it was like the Blitz kind of starting point where it's starting to becoming pretty popular.
Yeah.
Dasha Caraway was there. People from Netflix, from Microsoft. So we had a very good lineup, and also people really liked that it was a small community, and you could feel it quite fast on the Discord channels, etc., that people were actually having fun with each other and talking to each other. And it's amazing, these kind of interactions, because like sometimes you feel that in your conference people met and then they either became friends or they maybe went out together, or maybe they became co-founders for a company or something. And it's really amazing to be kind of part of that journey for people. So yeah.
Yeah. I can't imagine that feeling. But I know a few conference organizers who have been that for me, right? I think of there's Ken from Utah JS. Utah JS in 2018 was where I first met Kent C. Dodds, who's now just a good friend. Also, there's Juho. I can't say his last name, Vepsalinen or something, whatever. But he's from Finland. He used to run React Finland, now called Future Frontends, and that's where I met David
Yeah.
Khurshid, also speaker at React Brussels, David K. Piano. And these folks are just, I consider them very good friends at this point. And so they made those connections. You've made connections between people like, I think, Attila and Daniel Afonso, and like you've created these like, yeah, I don't know what that must feel like, but it must feel really good.
It's amazing.
About the speaker, you mentioned you had some really great speakers like Brandon Bayer and Daria Caraway, also friends of the podcast. Brandon was a guest. I think that's something that I've noticed that your conference does exceptionally well, which is the speaker experience. So for a lot of people listening, you're probably not speakers at conferences, especially not your conferences. And now, I mean, you could be, right? There's a call for papers. We can get into that. But I've only been to your conferences as a speaker. I've never been, and this sounds a bit weird, but I can tell you that and I've told you many times, the experience as a speaker at your conference is very, very special, right? Like you and your team go out of your way to make sure that we feel valued, and we feel like we're contributing, we're playing a role that's giving value to the attendees. Where does that come from? And for those listening who are maybe not connecting the dots, I can tell you exactly what I mean. So first of all, you cover our travel and hotel, which is very nice. But then when we get to the hotel room, there's like a little gift with a handwritten note. And the gift is usually Belgian chocolate because it's in Belgium. And just the thought that goes into that, I think, is very special. But also, the day after the conference, you take the speakers out and you show them the city. You're like, hey, look, you've done a thing for us. So let's... I remember we had a Belgian chocolate making workshop one time. We had a scavenger hunt. Where does that come from? And I can tell you this is rare. Not a lot of conferences do that. I wish they did. But where does that come from? I mean, it's very easy to just not do that and save costs and time and things.
Well, for me, like organizing conferences was not only about the content of the conference or the experience at the conference itself. For me, like when you organize a conference, you have like the whole image of the country, the city that is relying on what you are going to show. And this is why we give so much importance to the speaker activity, to the small gifts, to the speakers, because when we're organizing conferences here or in France or wherever, we're kind of showing people the entire culture of the conference. And the reason for that is that for me, I don't like when people visit a country and that's done over. I want them to really experience the country, the culture, meet local people, meet people from local communities, try the different traditions if possible. It's like, as I said, like the main goal is that one day we're going to organize a big conference in Tunisia, and my biggest goal would be like people going through the speaker activity with us in Tunisia and discovering the country, discovering the culture that most of the time people don't actually notice because they just see it in the media and it's not what the country represents, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, it can also, I think, play a role in expanding people's bubbles, which I'm guilty. Like, I have a bubble of my own, and everybody has their own bubble. And, like, I can't I can't ever, like, with full effect, say how valuable that is, right? Because, like, if I can speak to the speaker experience, by the way, I spend more time as a speaker than as an attendee at conferences. And usually, and that's not a flex, that's just data for what I'm about to say, which is, a lot of people, guests on the podcast, friends of mine, fellow speakers, get into speaking at tech conferences because it looks attractive. Oh, you get to be on a stage and people like actually listen to what you say, and you get to travel. For a lot of people, it's the travel. Like, wait, I get to like go somewhere and they pay for it? Yeah, sure. But I was reflecting with some speakers that this is actually a trap. And it's a trap because you don't actually travel. Like, you go somewhere, you arrive the day before the conference, and you're like preparing your slides and making sure everything's perfect. You have a tech check. You're not able to like go out and enjoy the city. And then the next day is the conference where you're probably speaking. So you spend the whole day in anxiety, especially if you're the last talk, and then you give your talk, conference is over, and then you fly home the next day. Or if you fly home maybe 2 days from then, you're way too tired to actually like do anything to really enjoy the city. And so the fact that you make that time, I think, is extremely valuable. And also for like actually experiencing the culture and getting out of the bubble. There's a lot of things I didn't know about Belgium that I know now because of your work. And I can't wait to see how that translates across cultures and across borders. Like in Tunisia, it's an Arab country. It's a culture that is so foreign to Europe and the United States and like the Western dominant tech industry. So that's exciting.
Yeah, it totally is. And I totally agree with you that it's very important. Like the way I compare the work of speakers when they say that they are speakers because they like traveling or something, it's a little bit like pilots, like they go
Exactly.
somewhere and they don't actually experience because they don't have time, they are too tired, they need to go back to work, etc. And
Exactly.
so that's why I try to kind of do these kind of activities because first they don't have to think about anything. They don't know the country. They don't know the different places. So we prepare everything for them. And at the same time, it's kind of relaxing because we're just having fun with each other and creating connections, actually. Like
Yeah.
the amount of people that kind of started working together because they met in one of our events is like crazy. And each time I'm like, yeah, I was a part of that. That's cool.
That is so cool. Yeah, you're like this matchmaker that has many cool unions formed. Um, I meant, can you like drop your earbud volume down a little bit, maybe by 2 or 3 notches, because there's some crossover into your microphone there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, are you concerned at all about the cultural differences? Like if you're doing something in the Middle East, in Tunisia, in Morocco, and people coming from the United States. And the reason I ask is because there was a big controversy with what was it, React Europe, that was trying to organize their conference in Dubai, right? And they faced a lot of backlash, particularly from the LGBTQ plus community, because Dubai is, not very receptive to a lot of the ideology there. You mentioned multiple times you want to bring this back to Tunisia. Is that a concern at all? How do you plan to navigate that?
So yes, it is a concern because, of course, even though Tunisia is very kind of Europeanized, I call it. So it's like people in Tunisia most of the time live like Europe, so we're a very open country. Morocco as well, but it's still a concern because even though it's like a very open country, like there are some things that are not possible. Not that they are not possible, but there might be issues if you do certain things, especially in public spaces. And my feeling about this is that I understand that for some people it's going to be difficult to go to Tunisia and attend the conference. But that is why we're not only doing the conference in Tunisia, we're also doing the conference in Paris, and we're doing other conference in Brussels. So people who want to attend our conferences are still able to come. But on the other side, what people don't think about is that it is true that for people from the LGBTQ plus community, it wouldn't be a nice experience for them to go to Dubai. But on the other hand, people from Tunisia, it's not that it's not a good experience to go to Europe. They can't go to Europe. There is no way for them to go to Europe because they need visas. Visas for Tunisia, for people in Tunisia, take around 9 months to get an actual visa to go to France or Belgium. And let's not talk about the money part because they don't have enough funds to go spend 3,000 euros or 4,000 euros between hotels and flights to go to a conference. So my idea is, yes, we're going to keep organizing conferences in Europe because we want to have people from Europe, but we are also going to organize conferences in Africa and maybe in Asia later, so that people from Africa and Asia are still able to attend these conferences.
Yeah, and we talked earlier about the value of attending these conferences being this thing that expands, maybe even bursts people's societal bubbles and really broadens their view. The first tech conference I ever went to, well, this is not true. The first tech conference I ever spoke at was JS Conf EU in 2018 or 2017. I can't remember. And I saw some crazy things, Aymen. I saw, for example, I'll give you one example. And I saw someone's bubble. Something happened, right? Because like there was a speaker on stage talking about how to respect the rights of transgender people in the workplace. And this was like on the main stage. And I don't know if you've seen the main stage of JSConf EU. It's massive. I mean, there's a big panorama like screen at the back, and it's like 1,800 to 1,000 people. It's just ginormous, right? And so I was sitting next to a man who was like scoffing every five. He was like listening to this talk, and he was like, "What is this? What is it?" And then like he lasted maybe 8 to 12 minutes, and then he just got up and left. He was like, "I thought I was coming to a JavaScript conference. What is this?" And he just like walked out. And I thought this is so interesting. And it was, keep in mind, it was the first one. It was one of the first conferences I've been to, and I also was thinking like, this is an interesting topic. This is a needed topic, but this is not JavaScript. And I didn't know how to deal with it at the time. I certainly didn't think it was bad, like this person and leave, right? But I thought this is interesting. And over time, I got to know that, hey, listen, tech is eating the world, and we need to know how to relate to one another in the JavaScript ecosystem. And then I understood, okay, this is about JavaScript, but the community, not just the code. And in many cases, the community matters more than the code. Why am I telling you all this? Well, because I think you make such an excellent point that yes, for some LGBTQ plus community members in Europe, it may be difficult to go to a region like Dubai or Tunisia or Qatar. On the other hand, one, I love your point that this stuff is just completely inaccessible to those folks, and that may be by those folks I mean the people in Tunisia, Dubai, etc. But on the other hand, it also those conferences are needed there, and they need access to such events like BeJS conferences, because then their bubbles can expand and they can maybe help themselves out of prejudice and intolerance. They can literally see, hey, the world is huge and I need to adapt to it. I need to respond in a way that is kind and welcoming, as opposed to in a way that is, scoffing every 15 minutes and then rage quitting, so to speak. I never thought about that before. That I think that's so profound.
Yeah, I think it's very important to, even though like it might be complicated, to still go to conferences and still, because people sometimes they are just they never experienced a certain situation and they are like, okay, I will be uncomfortable, but then it happens and then they become super friends with an LGBTQ plus person and then they don't care about it anymore just because they met somewhere and had a few drinks or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think like it's like sometimes it's like some speakers, for example, female speakers or even male speakers, don't want to go to conferences where there isn't a good balance between different genders in the speaker lineup, especially. And I think it's not great because you're just, if you're not going there, then you're actually, they will have way more issues to actually get that balance between the speakers. I understand that some conferences are not maybe doing the effort, but still, if each time they ask a speaker to attend, they tell them, oh no, you don't have enough balance, then they will never have enough balance, actually. So
It becomes
I
like
think
a
it's pretty
recursive.
similar in that way.
Yeah. What I guess in this case, the best way forward, and again, like the whole lesson here is like if somebody wants to take on organizing a conference or improve theirs, what do they do? I think in this case, what do you think about? I'm interested actually to hear how you solved this at BJS, because like all your conferences have really perfect representation across diverse groups of people. I think that is so cool. If I was to throw out an idea, in the case where you're having like a person reject a speaking invite because there's not enough diversity, would it be helpful to go to them and say, look, everybody's rejecting us. We need somebody to help initialize the diversity. And of course, you're super talented. There's more than just the diversity here. But we need, like, you need to make the first move, so to speak. Would that be helpful? Or I'm curious how you all solved this.
So for us, to be honest, like we always, since the beginning of our events, we always did our best to have a balanced speaker lineup. But also we are in Europe, and in Europe there is still quite a lot of diversity, especially in Belgium. There are people coming from everywhere, and so there is a big diversity in terms of speakers and developers in general. But in some countries or communities, it might be that there aren't that many female developers. So it might be more difficult for people to have that balance than for us. But there are some kind of rules that we set up that help us kind of get that balance. So one of these rules is that we do anonymized CFPs. So basically, when people vote for the CFP, for the different
Can we can we
talks.
back up 1 second here and talk about
Yeah.
a CFP? There may be people listening here who don't even know what a CFP
Oh yeah,
is.
sorry. So CFP is a call for paper.
So it's a form that you fill out with a title and a short description of your talk, and then you submit it, and this goes to you or your team, and then it's anonymous, so they don't see the name, they just see the idea.
So basically, what we do is that for us, because as a conference organizer, I try to minimize the amount of interaction I have with speakers. So when I ask them for something, I ask for everything. And then it's my job to go and just create another form with just the talk title and the talk description for our partners and program committee to vote on these talks. So they only see talk title and talk description. And also something else that we do is that when the call for paper is open, we try to reach out to as many people as possible to apply for the CFP. And to be honest, like every year we have more and more female speakers and people from underrepresented groups applying because it builds up. So if people see that there is only white male in a speaker lineup, no one will apply the next year. But if they see that it's pretty balanced, then more people apply, and it gets better every year. So every year for you as an organizer, it gets easier.
That's very interesting. This actually ties in perfectly to Monica Sarba. We had Monica from Zeta, the founder and CEO of Zeta, on the podcast, and she runs the company with, I think it was like 48% gender identity diversity across the company, meaning male-female split, which is incredible. And she cares a lot about this. She even said exactly the same thing. Like, from running a company, if you have employees who are like 9 out of 10 are men and white, then women are just not going to apply. But if from, like you said, from day one, you care about this, then it becomes easier over time. Like, they don't have problems hiring for diversity, equal representation now because they cared. So what I'm hearing from you really practically is you have to go at it from day zero. And then if year 1 has good diversity, year 2 will get easier and year 5 will get easiest. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's accurate, but you always need to keep working on it. I mean, like, it's not because it gets easier that you have to stop caring about it and say that it will be automatic. You always have to keep it in mind. And sometimes we also, like, once the selection is done, we also say, okay, we have some rules that we need for our lineup. So one of these rules is to always have at least one person who speaks for the first time in an international conference. That's very important to us. We don't want to be the same conference as 10 others where it's like the usual suspects speaking. Another rule is that we need someone local. So we organize conferences in Belgium, France, and soon in Morocco. We need locals as well, because it's also different cultures. Even when developing, even though software engineering is like a lot of rules, it's still a lot of culture that is different. And so it's very important to us to share this culture between the different countries.
What I hear from all of this, what you're talking about, is what makes your conferences really great is the willingness to do the hard thing, because this doesn't sound easy at all. Like to find someone who it's their first international conference ever. How do you even do that? What if they don't submit something? Because a lot of these people are scared. It's my first time. I don't know what to submit. I don't know if it's good. So someone for their first international talk, that's already hard. But then also to get a local. In a community without maybe very well known people like Morocco or other places, that's wild. And I never noticed this pattern in your conferences, but now that you mention it, I'm actually starting to connect the dots. I think like at React Paris there was Kautar from Morocco. That may have been her first international. I don't know if she was the one, but now I'm going to go back to your speaker list and like pick and see like who I can identify was the first. That's incredible. I wish more organizers do this. I wanted to ask you about diversity across repeat speakers, right? I've been to everyone you've organized, and I intend to keep coming. However, I can't do React Brussels this year. I feel so bad about it. But I like some conferences do this, and I think it's really great for some reasons, but also has its trade-offs. So I would love if you can speak to some of the nuance about this. Some conferences they have a quota. Like you said, there should be at least one who it's their first international talk, at least one local, they have a subset. I don't know, some percentage of the speaker lineup has to be the old gang from last year or from previous years. And the reason they do that I find so interesting is because, like you said, you make these connections of people who are like super friends and they go on to start companies together or work together. They want to do that. And so I've heard from like 3 of my speaker friends that, oh, we spoke there last year, we're going to speak there this year, and we're going to speak there next year because we were invited, because the organizers want us to be really good friends. How do you feel about that?
For us, doing that wouldn't be really possible, and for several reasons. So we are a one-day single track conference. So we are very limited in terms of talk slots. And so we have some speakers that we really like you, for example. We
Thanks.
know that the atmosphere and the kind of energy that you provide to our attendees is amazing. So that's why we kind of invite you each time. But we don't really think about getting people back again. It happens that some people come back. Lots of speakers spoke two or three times, or like you, several times at our conferences, but we don't really have a rule for that. It's sometimes just a matter of luck and the subjects being interesting. Because a lot of speakers, what they do is that they have a list of 7-8 talks, and they would apply with these 7-8 talks everywhere. And that's totally fine. But then sometimes we get around 10 or 12 talks that are about the same single topic. And then it's just a matter of chance which one of those will be selected. Sometimes it's also a matter of how the proposal was written. And so, yeah, we don't have a rule for that. Just, I think, a matter of luck. But I wouldn't think that one day we decide, okay, we will always have a quota of the same people coming back.
Yeah.
I don't see the reason, actually.
Yeah.
What we do, though, is that our friends, we still invite them to join, even though sometimes they are not speaking. We still try to invite them because we just like to hang out with them. That we do.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's so great, because then indeed the friends come back and hang out, but they don't need to occupy a speaking slot that would be better served to someone else, right? Like,
Exactly.
What are some of the biggest challenges you've faced running these conferences?
There are a lot. I think our biggest challenge as a conference and a community is selling tickets. And so I spend enormous amount of time working on the marketing behind BeJS. It's something that I hate. It's something that I'm bad at, which I guess explains why we don't have big sales. But I try to do my best, and it's something that is very difficult for me as a developer, because there are so many information and so many ways of doing it, and we want to respect privacy of our attendees, so we don't want to track them everywhere and to cheap sales techniques, etc. So we try to avoid all of that. And so we struggle, to be honest, with selling tickets most of the time. It's getting better each year, but for the first years, it was very difficult to sell tickets. Something that I noticed, for example, is that JavaScript conferences are way harder to sell than React conferences.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy. What else?
Why is that? Why do you think JavaScript sells less than React?
I think JavaScript conferences most of the time are too broad. Like you would find talks about CI, talks about backend, talks about frontend, talks about Vite plugins that 90% of devs will never write a plugin in their entire life, so they just don't care. Also for managers and companies, because 99% of the attendees that come to our conferences, their tickets are paid by their companies. And usually it's easier to convince your boss that you're going to a React conference as a React developer than convince your boss that you're going to a JavaScript conference as a React developer. And also, React ecosystem is way more noisy and way more active than the JavaScript ecosystem, I say.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing is it's more if you can match words that people use in their day-to-day jobs. So, like everybody uses JavaScript and all React is JavaScript, but the more granular you get, maybe the more companies would be willing to pay money to buy tickets and send their teams there. So like you could maybe do a conference that's like what's a very specific, like RxJS conf would probably sell better than a JS conf. That's the thesis? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think, yeah. I think like Angular confs or React confs. I mean, I'm a big fan of React, so that's why I organize React conferences. And there is also an Angular conference in Belgium, so I don't want to compete with them or whatever. So that's why I'm more into React. But I think it goes for all different frameworks.
Interesting. This is okay. This is a big tip for people who want to start conferences: is start as fine grained as you can with technology. Even like Next.js Conf. Yeah. Now that you say it, I see Next.js Conf or Remix Conf or I don't know, like Marco Conf, Solid Conf. All of this would probably sell more than just JavaScript Conf, because one, JavaScript is too vague, but also it scales proportionately probably with the user base of the project. Interesting. And this is why React Conf is probably so successful, because React has so many developers. And this is probably why like Marco Conf or Solid.js Conf wouldn't sell that much, because compared to React, the community isn't that big. That's so interesting. So pick the biggest specific technology and go make a conference about it. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's
okay.
That's the gist of it.
Awesome. So the big challenge is marketing. Interesting. I feel like you could maybe hire people for this, or I'm not here to solve your problem. I'm just curious what challenges conferences typically face. I've heard this from other conference organizers also, is like, how do we get the word out there and how do we position it in such a way that people will want to buy tickets? And by people, we mean stakeholder, decision makers at companies. This is not the first time. In fact, every single founder, more or less, maybe except one or two on this series, has mentioned that that's just the problem in general. Like even for businesses, even for companies who are solving very complex, like generative AI, whatever, they're like, we can't seem to figure out marketing. That's so interesting that this is common here with conferences.
I think it's plausible because there are so many factors that get that you need to take into account, especially in our field. Like you're talking with developers, depending on where you go, it's also a different culture. Like for example, React Paris sold out easily. React Brussels, on the other way, is way harder to market because first, Belgian devs, they don't have any social network. Like you would have to almost like beg people to tweet one thing. And if they have a Twitter account, they probably have 2 followers, or because they don't like social networks in general. Like all of my colleagues, the people that I work with, no one has a social network. Maybe WhatsApp or Messenger, but that's it. No Twitter, no Facebook, no Instagram, nothing.
That's so interesting. And conferences are highly social events. So how do you reach people without social? I had no idea. Could it also be that this lack of social networking extends to just a general like dislike? Not dislike. Dislike is too negative, but a general lack of interest in even like socializing in person?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people that organize conferences are struggling a lot after COVID, and that's because the proposal changed. Before COVID, what you were selling is a day away from the office because everyone needed to go to the office. So going to a conference is just, okay, I'm not going to the office. I'm going to see new people, enjoy, drink for free, eat for free, wherever. But now, selling a conference is convincing people to go out of their place, go out of their pajamas, to do 1 hour and a half of traffic or wherever, or train or wherever, do the conference, and then miss time with their family and everything and all. So it's way harder to convince people to actually do it. And for the online tickets, some of them, some of the people buy, but also people say, yeah, it will be available on YouTube anyway in 1 month or so. So I'll just watch it then. So it's way harder to sell.
This is so interesting. So it sounds like a return to office would also probably positively impact conference ticket sales indirectly, because it's just an escape from the office at some point. Wow. That I think you captured that actually very well. Just reflecting on my own experience, like I look, we had weird developers in Berlin. It's also, to be fair, it's like 17 tracks. There's like 15,000 people. I don't know. You'd have to pay me to go to this conference. But let's maybe use a smaller example. The GeekConf, right? This was in Berlin. Really great conference, single track, one day, in a really one of the most beautiful conference venues I've ever seen in Berlin. I didn't even know this place existed, and it's like downtown. It's in the middle of the city. It's maybe 20 minutes from where I live. I still didn't want to go, honestly, because I was okay. I have to choose between my home and this thing. Yeah, I never thought of that. That's a very, very astute observation.
It's like something I said to my girlfriend a few days ago. I told her, like, software engineers nowadays, their dream is to live on their own in a cabin in the forest on a tree, and
Yeah,
just
go be
with
a
their
farmer.
family.
Yeah. Yeah, I that honestly, you spark joy when you say that. But I do value people, of course. Like I have my people and my community, but yes, live somewhere far away in a cabin with all the people I care about, with you and your girlfriend and everyone. Like Attila will be there. It'll be great. What is the most memorable moment from your time doing these conferences, BeJS? What is, like, if you think back, this was one of those moments I'll never forget.
So there are a few moments that I really loved. One of them was a few months ago when I was at React Conf, when I saw the React Paris website on one of the slides at the conference. I was
Yeah,
like almost crying. I was like, oh my God.
we made it.
We made it. Yeah, that was an incredible feeling. But each time someone reaches out and says, "Hey, I was able to find a job at your conference, thank you," or "Hey, me and that person met at that conference, and then they invested in my company, and now we're friends," or wherever. All of these moments are amazing, and they are worth all of the issues and troubles that that you get when you're organizing conferences. Also, usually what we do at the conference is that to close the conference, we take a group photo together, and that's for me usually like the time that I'm like, okay, now I can just enjoy the moment and
Yeah.
forget everything else. And so for me, that's also super nice when we take that picture, because after that I can start drinking and enjoying and having fun.
How very Belgian of you. This is interesting. You say that's the moment where you feel like, okay, it's done. I remember one of my biggest, like most strongest, I'd say, memories of you was I came to you during React Brussels, and it was the day of the conference. You're walking around doing whatever it is you do, being the organizer, making sure everything's fine. And I asked you, how are you feeling? And you said, I feel great. You said this whole place could burn down, everything could crash and burn, whatever. He's like, yeah, and you're like, I don't care. I don't care because I've done my best in all the days and months leading up to this. And honestly, if everything breaks and it all falls apart, I don't care because I've given my best. I thought that was so interesting, and it was so different from most other organizers I've spoken to, because you should see them on the day. They've got walkie talkies, and like literally, I was at React Rally, and Mike, I don't think he'd mind me sharing this, but he had a headset, and he had like 15 voices in his head constantly. And so like you're sitting face to face with him, and you're like, hey Mike, so where should we go to dinner? And he's like, he's in the multiverse, you know. This is typical. And but you're like, dude, I've done my best, everything's smooth sailing, whatever. That's awesome. Where does that come from, and how does that serve you?
So the thing is that in order to be as confident as we usually are on the day of the conference, there is a lot of preparation before. I don't know about React Rally, but we're still kind of a small conference. We're usually maximum 300 people. We'll never do conferences more than 500. So we're a pretty small conference. I don't know if it gets bigger. Of course, there will be way more things to handle. But for us, we usually prepare the day by the minute. We also do tech checks with speakers the day before. So 99% of the time, the speakers, they just plug in and they are ready to go. We also rely on the venue team for the technical part, etc. And something that is very important is that we have every time we had amazing volunteers. So they help with everything related to the day of the conference, like welcoming people, giving badges away. To be honest, like most of the time I always say that even though I stay kind of worried about most of the parts of the conferences, I still kind of enjoy my conference. I watch the talks, I post on social media. There is a lot of things to manage at the same time. So a lot of information going in and a lot of decision to make quite fast. But I actually can enjoy the conference, and that's 100% thanks to our volunteers, because they do an amazing job.
That's so cool. Who are your volunteers? And by that I mean, what type of persona would volunteer to? I assume it's people who are maybe transitioning into tech, who want to see how the sausage is made, who want to sort of get that event planning and organizing experience. Almost like people who are saying, hey, I'm a willing intern. I want to get more experience. Is that the typical volunteer persona? And if so, do you have enough? How do you get more?
So usually what we do is that we just have a form that we share on social media and people apply. And then we try to discuss with them, see if they are really serious about it, etc. And that's all. And it worked pretty well for us. Like for React Brussels, we kind of have the core volunteers that helped us for the 3 previous editions. And we stayed together. Some of them work, some of them are looking for work or were looking for work when they joined the team. And the good thing that we kind of became friends. So it's not even as kind of volunteering anymore. We're just friends helping each other.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I mean, you're an organizer of a conference that I enjoy, that 300, maybe if you add up the numbers over each conference, it's in the thousands, right? People actually come to enjoy, learn from. But part of the podcast is capturing nuance. And so you're more than that. You're an engineer. You run this consultancy. I'd love to talk a little bit about that as well, the technical side. You said you love React. Your conference is about React. Is that what you work with for the most part? What does your typical work look like?
So currently I work mainly with React, some Next.js and some React CRA stuff, and that's my main job.
Driver.
So I work around between 40 and 60 hours a week as a consultant, depending on the weeks. A few years ago, I used to do web components with Lit.
Wow.
But I actually tried everything apart from Vue, maybe. Uh, I did a little bit of Svelte. I did a little bit of Backbone JS at the time, jQuery, PHP. So, but now I do mainly React.
Right.
For the past
Yeah.
maybe I don't know 5 years.
I guess that's the benefit of being a consultant is you get to try many different things depending on because usually your customers come to you and they're just like make me a shopping cart and you're like okay and so you go like oh I'm interested in Quick I'm going to try so you've been mostly with React are you using mostly server rendered server component style are you creating mostly those types of applications you mentioned Next.js or does it bias more towards single page applications?
So we have currently we have different apps. One of them is a Next.js server components app router app. The other one is it used to be CRA, but now I moved it to Vite. Also, like in terms of fields, one is about kind of a job website. The other one is an app for, how can I say? So it's an app to help people who do research on medicine and drugs
Wow.
do a lot of simulations and calculations. It's to ensure that they have enough supply to do their trials. And another app I'm working on is a communication app. So it's like calls, videos.
Wow, it's a highly
Yeah,
interactive.
it is. And one specificity of this app that I don't think a lot of apps do have is that people work on this website because it's a browser-based. They work on this website for shifts of 12 hours.
Oh
That
wow.
page doesn't refresh for 12 hours. You forget to clean something, it's a memory leak for sure.
Wow. That's wow. In this case, what I would do, I've actually done this in the past. I built a similar platform, and I built a I don't want to call it a backdoor, but I built a WebSocket into it, such that the moment you open it, it starts a subscription to a WebSocket server that I control as the developer, and when I needed to fix a memory leak or something, I would send an event reload, and it would just trigger a hard reload on the page, just to update it. So I think that's that would be my hack to get around that. Are there any particular patterns or libraries you're particularly interested in these days that so full disclosure I've been super out of the loop on React. I wrote this book and then I was like okay cool this is
It's
great
done.
and then yeah well and then I've kept up to date with React 19 and it's mostly just form stuff right like use form state use form status actions and so on. Are you using any of that? If not, what are some interesting patterns, libraries, etc. You're finding that you get to use in React?
So recently, I've been interested a lot in the remix, and I'm really looking forward to the V7 of React Router as well. So that's something that I'm very interested in currently. Apart from that, Astro, I've been wanting to do something with Astro like for
Man,
I don't know, maybe around at least 2 years. Every time I'll do it, I'll
wow,
do it, I'll do it,
yeah,
but never got the chance to. Because I mean, like, yeah, if you if you take 40 to 60 hours of consulting plus all the work that I have to do for the conference, plus all what I have to do for my company, because I have my own company, so all the management stuff and
yeah.
the admin, etc. Plus, I travel a lot, like a lot. So yeah, I don't have much time left.
I guess the trick would be to put Astro in your consulting or honestly like I I saw so much hype about Astro. Like Yuna Kravitz built her website in Astro. And we're both friends with Ilian, who was formerly at Astro. And it's just, I saw a lot of hype. So I was like, I'm going to use it. I'm going to rebuild. So the classic web engineer thing, I'm going to rebuild my website with this thing just to see how it feels. And I did. And it was a really amazing experience, I have to say. I'm going to make you feel worse for not trying Astro. Yeah, but it's just so good. The CLI has this like Pokemon-like character that talks to you.
Yeah.
Houston, and the websites it creates, like, developer experience aside, are just always the fastest websites, period. And that's because it gives you really nice heuristics for controlling when JavaScript loads. They don't have server components, as far as I know, but I haven't even felt the need for it. So plus one to Astro. I think it's just really cool, and I hope you get to try it. Do you think React is in trouble? And the reason I'm asking is this is the discourse, right? Like, a lot of people said React has its Angular 2 moment and React is going out of style. People can say whatever they want, but the numbers talk. And if we look at the numbers, React has still the biggest community and so on. But I wanted to get your take on this, because even at your conference, there's so many like Solid.js talks, Astro talks, all these like things that people may see as competitors to React. Where do you land on this?
So one of the reasons we have these talks at our conferences is that we're very open community. It's not because we like and love React, and that for me it's the tool that I'm the most productive in that is better than Solid. And each decision you take has trade-ins and trade-offs, and so it always depends of your needs and what you need to do. For me, the reason why also I wasn't able to create something with Astro is that when I want to do something, I want to do it as fast as possible, and I want to be as productive as possible. And that for me is React. I don't have to think anymore. I just do stuff. Like when I'm working now, I used to always say that being a developer is spending your life Googling things. I almost don't do that anymore. When I have to do a feature, I don't even think, I do it. And sometimes I would like code for, I don't know, half an hour, 1 hour, try it. Most of the time it works. There are bugs here and there that I fix, but it works. And that for me, I won't have it from day zero with Solid or Astro or wherever. So for me, it's not worth it to go and learn Solid or Astro, or try them at least. I mean, learn them. It's okay. It's good, but try them for an actual project is not that important for me, because I already have what I need, and I think that's the main difference of between React now compared to Angular before. When React came out, everyone was like, I will never do something else again. And now, even though Solid might be better, but is it better enough for people to go and migrate 3 or 4 years of code to Solid? It isn't. Astro neither. So that's my point of view. But for new projects, maybe people will go to these technologies, and even there it's debatable, but
it sounds like the big factor, the big differentiator is time and productivity cost more than anything else, right? Because I can tell you, when I built my website with Astro, to finish it, I created the basic version in like a weekend. But to go from the 80-20 thing, right? Like you build 80% of it and then you never finish the 20%. That 20%, it took me start to finish 100% for this website 4 months. 4 months. Because there was just that 20% was full of like new Astro stuff that I was like, how do I do this? Ilyan, this is broken. How do I do this? Ben, like, help me. And I agree with you. I think if you ask me to create something new, if I pick up Next.js, I'm going to, it'll be done. And I know it'll be done. I know Next.js inside and out. If you ask me to do this in Remix, there will be a time multiplier. Astro, not anymore, because I'm quite familiar with it, but there's this tax, the innovation tax, or the tax for adopting a new skill. and getting the techniques right. And yeah, I think when you work in a consultancy, you just you can't pay that tax unless the client's like, yeah, we'll pay for all the extra time, just learn this thing, which that would be really cool. In fact, this is why I particularly enjoy full-time employment, because oftentimes if the deadline is far out enough, like my manager is like, yeah, just do it, learn it, it's good, it's going to pay a dividend later, it's an investment, and we can be a bit more flexible with that. Good. It's good to hear that your take is React is not in danger, because it's just we've all developed the muscle memory. How did you say it? You don't have to think anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Excellent, man. I think what is the overlap of things you see at your conference versus things you then go use in your job? I think this is because a lot of people hesitate. I'm talking about employers sending employees to conferences. Oh no, we're not going to send you there. You're not going to learn anything. You're just going to go there and drink all day. Is there overlap? I mean, you do both. You organize the conference and you work in tech. I think a lot of organizers maybe don't get that luxury. Is there overlap? Like, for example, do you have moments where you're like, oh, I saw this in a talk, I'm going to use it at work? How often does that happen? What does that look like?
So you see that a lot. So sometimes you see a new tech or something at a conference, and then you're like, oh, I want to use that. But then it doesn't actually happen because, like, I mean, the chances of you needing that library at your work are very, very, very slim. But for me, going to conferences is not only about the content. So that's the first point. Because developers go to conferences when I do a lot of conferences, to be honest. I organize one, and I organize them, but I also do a lot of them.
By do you mean you attend them?
Yes, exactly. And every time I come back from a conference, my motivation is way higher. And I'm excited about trying new things, about checking out that library. As I said, maybe I'll probably not use it for my actual work. But the fact that I know it and that I know that it exists, the day that I will need it, I'll be able to propose it as a solution. So for me, it's a win-win, because even though you don't use what you're going to learn at the conference, you might use it later at a certain point where you will need it. Because again, conferences are so broad that conference content is so broad that it's difficult to kind of have only actionable things. But then also, like, there are some things that we're putting in place so to improve the content of our conferences, for example. So something that we did is that we completely removed sponsored talks. We don't have those. You want to sponsor, you have a booth at the conference, but you can't speak at the conference. You want to speak at the conference, apply through the CFP as anyone else.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm very happy about that. Because, sometimes you go to a conference and then half of the day is just sales pitch,
Yeah.
I didn't like that for our conferences, even though sometimes some people are able to take a sponsored talk and make it into something valuable. But still, people always feel that you're selling me something. You want me to try your product. So that's something else also. Even though we receive many kind of showcases, talks about showcases of tools, even though they are open source or something, we usually try to not select those, because I know that, or sometimes the tool is useful, but it's useful for a very small portion of people, like as I mentioned, how to write a Vite plugin. Yeah, I'll learn about that when I will have to write one. You see what I mean? Most of or how to write an ESLint rule. Yeah, again, almost no one ever wrote an ESLint rule. Most of the people, of course. You see what I mean? And so we try to select talks that are practical and can give immediate benefits to the attendees.
Interesting. I've heard this. This is not the first time I hear this, that, yeah, the content is cool, but it doesn't really matter that much. What matters more is what people call the hallway track. Like, I'm just going to meet people. I'm going to meet Mishko Hevry. I'm going to meet Ryan Carniato. I'm going to meet all these cool people. And then we're going to talk. They're going to teach me. And I think a lot of people won't say this, but they're thinking it. And then my network of influential people will grow. I've heard this a lot. If that's the case, do you think it's worth rethinking the entire format of conferences? Because like sometimes people like they don't want to go to the talks, or they like drag themselves to the talk because like honestly I've heard people say this is just me being an introvert. I don't actually want to meet people, so I'm going to sit in this talk. Do you think it may be worth considering fewer talks and more time for in-person interaction? And the reason I ask is I keep going back to this, Aymen. One of the best interactions at conferences I've ever had was at AgentConf. They stopped. They can't do it anymore because it's too expensive and they don't sell enough tickets. This is the common problem. But what they did, right? 2 days, stage and talks. 2 days is in I think a movie theater, and you get up on stage. There's really great talks, and of course lunch and like networking in between. But then for the 2 days after that, people can buy extra tickets. That is literally just like camping in a ski lodge. They take you to the Austrian Alps, somewhere high up in a mountain town where the only economy of the town is skiing, and you stay in this like youth ski lodge. They rent out the entire place. And there's meal service, so everybody comes to like this common like kitchen for lunch and dinner, and for those who want to go skiing, they go skiing the whole day. But it's just that there's no talks, there's no presentations, there's no this is the expert speaker and you're the audience. You sit and listen. It's literally everybody's the same, and we're gonna just go skiing. Or for those who don't want to go skiing, there's a table tennis room. You can play table tennis. There's actually a room with desks and chairs. You can sit and work. You can even co-work if you want. And this was, I've never been to anything like this before, but it was so cool because there were evenings where it was just me. I was in the table. I like table tennis. I was in the table tennis area. I was me and Rick Hanlon from the React core team. We're just playing, and we just sit and talk about React. And Remix is doing this, and Next.js is doing that. At some point, Kent C. Dodds walks in, and he joins so it's a nice three-way conversation, and we're just chatting. And then like attendees who, they don't speak at conferences, they're just attending, they walk in and they join the conversation. And eventually we had this like really great like 2-hour like in-depth, Remix does this. And we learned actually how Remix is able to give the impression of streaming a promise across the network, such that the promise starts on the server and resolves on the client. It was very novel at the time, but everybody understood that because Kent just taught us organically. That's so cool. Anyway, this is my long-winded way of asking, like, should we maybe rethink the typical format of a conference?
Yes, we should. And we're actually working on it. So a few days ago, we announced that for React BeJS 2025, we're going to do things a little bit differently. Yeah. So the first thing is that we will have longer breaks. That's something so that people can spend more time networking and discussing, etc. That's the first thing. The second thing that we also wanted to put in place is that we received a lot of feedback saying that 25 minutes or 30 minutes talks is not enough for people to go deep enough for senior devs to be interested. And that most of the talks were kind of like just from scratch the surface. And so what we're going to do for React Paris is that we're going to have 2-day conference. And the idea is that in the mornings, those will be the content heavy kind of times. So we will have talks of 45 minutes to 1 hour, where it will almost be like a workshop more than an actual talk. That's the first part. Then in the afternoon, after lunch, when people start to be a bit down in energy, etc., that's where we're going to have more panel discussions, more interactive talks. Maybe we're thinking of introducing group discussions as well, where people could gather somewhere and say, okay, I want to discuss about this. The others will discuss about something else. Basically, people discussing different problems on their day-to-day life. We're working on it, but it's still in the works, and it's just an experiment because, as I said, we received a lot of feedback where people want more advanced content, especially for senior devs. They want more advanced content. They want to go deeper into things, understand things better. So, and 25 minutes is not enough for that.
That's really challenging because, like, more advanced content is good, but it also heavily depends on the deliverer
Speaker.
of this content. Yeah, right. Because like if you have an hour and it's a really great 25-minute speaker, I've seen it not go so well when you give the same 25-minute great speaker an hour. And
I know.
that must be so challenging for you. But
Yeah,
this is go ahead.
It's an experiment, so we just would like to try it, and we are going to try to work with the speakers to kind of make them, maybe give them the tools and the ability to be able to stay for 1 hour and still be entertaining. Because I've been to conferences and I saw people sleeping in 1 hour talks, like literally
I actually have a
sleeping
video
on
of someone
several
sleeping.
chairs.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think it's really great that you're willing to work with speakers to do this. I hope the speakers are also willing to work. If I will just sign myself up if you want to like act as some type of coach to speak. It sounds a bit douchebaggy of me because like what gives you the right? But like if needed, if I can be of help, I would love to like support the speakers who are doing these talks because I have to believe, you mentioned also this criteria of someone who it's their first time international, somebody local. They may be really smart with some great content, but the delivery is where they struggle. I think this is where I could definitely support your conference. I want to emphasize very clearly, I am here for this because, man, it's even my criticism that 25 minutes are too short. I was so frustrated with this 25-minute talk format that I started this podcast. That's why this podcast exists because I was like, what can we do in 25 minutes, And so that's really exciting to me. Okay, so it's 2 days, and the mornings, the early portion of the day is just really deep dives, right? 45 minutes to an hour, maybe 2 or 3 talks, and then interactive things later. That is so cool. I can't wait to see what you come up with. I'd love to even work with you on some of the stuff if you're open to it. Some conferences do topic tables. Some conferences do an unconference where people just like submit talks on the same day, right? You've been to many conferences, so you've probably got a good pool of ideas to choose from.
Yeah, that's why actually I go to conferences. I always say to people, I'm here to steal ideas.
Yeah, I've actually seen you do that. We've crossed each other at many, many conferences that you did not organize, and you were there sort of as a spy. Has there been conferences that you went to that you were like, oh, I'm definitely stealing this? What are some stolen ideas? Just to give credit back, but also to hear that maybe others who are starting conferences or running conferences can also, steal. Because I believe if everybody steals really great ideas, then everything gets better.
Yeah, so one conference that I get a lot of inspiration from is usually GitNation conferences. I love the format. I love the interactivity that they have. I love how everything goes so smoothly, etc. So I get a lot of ideas from what they do. The conference, what was Infobip Shift?
Yeah,
In Zadar.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Infobip Shift.
Yeah. I also saw a lot of super nice ideas there. I mean, if we could steal the weather, I would. But the problem again is that a lot of times I see great ideas, but for them to work, you need thousands of devs. Like example, I love the idea of having a discussion room in
React
GitNation
Day
events.
Berlin.
They do that.
Yeah.
They do that a lot. Discussion rooms. We tried to do that once, and then we had just two people in the discussion room. Yeah, you see, so if you have 2,000 people attending the conference, you will probably have at least 50 or 100 people at your discussion room. But if you have only 200 or 300 people attending, then it's way harder to attract people. Also, the fact that we're a single track conference, most of the people are usually like, okay, I- I'm just doing the talks. While GitNation events are usually multi-track, and there is a lot of things happening at the same time, so people are kind of wander around sometimes trying to discover something to do. And so for us, it's way more difficult to create other activities other than the main topic of the conference, which are the talks.
Yeah. Were you at C3 Festival?
I was there for React Summit and GSNation, but not for C3. I left in the morning that day.
Interesting. Yeah, because I have to really respect GitNation because they really try a bunch of stuff. They're constantly trying new things. And C3 Festival, for those who are listening who haven't heard of it, it's this thing that's like a disco party. It's a conference, but also there's speed dating. They later called it speed networking, and there's 3 dance floors with like lights and strobe lights and music, and you can it's just dance. And it's interesting because they were selling tickets where you could just buy tickets to the parties and not so much to the talks. And I think that's so interesting, right? Because it validates the idea that people don't actually come for the content; they come for the networking, or maybe they come for the dancing. We should maybe get Rob from GitNation on the show to talk about how that went. But
You should.
yeah,
You should.
yeah. So
Uh,
go
I
ahead.
think I think people go to conferences for several reasons. I don't think partying and dancing is one of them, to be honest, because that's why we tried one time to do a party, but it didn't work out well. Not a lot of people came at the end, and most of
Oh
the
wow.
people were outside of the venue speaking. So what we do now is what we call a drink. So there are few drinks here and there. It's 2 or 3 hours, so it's not too long for people if they want to go wander around in the city. Um, and it's there isn't too much music. It's not so loud, and so people can discuss and network and create this connection that I can't stop talking about. Apparently, uh,
Yeah.
and then by the end there is a few people left, and we go get drinks and get dinner somewhere else once the venue is closed. And I think that worked well for us because I think most of the people don't like loud music
Yes. I certainly
uh,
don't like loud
and
music, especially when
and
I'm trying to
prefer
talk to someone.
yeah and prefer to just spend time discussing. So that's why we stopped doing parties.
Good. Okay, let's talk about your upcoming conference, React Brussels. I think that's the next one, right? That's the next one in the
Yes.
rotation. It's happening, of course. It's in the name in Brussels. What can people expect? Where can they buy tickets? Where if they want to sponsor, how do they find it?
So it's going to happen on the 18th of October, 2024, in Brussels. There will be talks about server components, AI, design systems, React compiler. So we have an amazing lineup, to be honest. I'm really excited about the content that the speakers prepared. And to buy tickets, people can just go on react.brussels, and they will be able to buy tickets there. We can also provide the podcast with a discount code if you want for your
Yeah, we
for
were
your
we were actually going to
listeners.
just give away. We were going to give away like a one free ticket. But if you want to do that, we can
Yeah.
also. Yeah, let's talk after.
Yeah, we can do both. So we can
Okay.
do one giveaway and a discount for
Well, the giveaway was
for
going to be
the
just
others.
from the podcast. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
In any case, I would love that because the whole point is getting people there and getting them to witness the magic and getting them to make the connections, right? And I want the podcast to have it. Look, you take all this joy from making these connections, and honestly, I want some of that. I want to be able to send people to this conference and help them make connections and so on. So, yeah, we'll definitely do that. Can we shout out the? You mentioned the speaker selection criteria. I was actually looking at the speaker list, and there's some really great diversity here across not just gender identities but also racial and other tenets. This is really cool. And again, once again, I applaud you for that because it looks close to 50-50 male female. Can we talk about? I love also, by the way, that your MCs are definitely 50-50 male female. I'm a little bit sad to not be part of this, but can we shout out the local and the person who it's their first international conference?
So let me check to remember who's speaking already.
I would guess that the local is Alex Moulineuf. Oh, am I saying that wrong? I'm probably saying that wrong.
no, Alex Moulineuf is a guy from France, but the local one is Jonathan Gelin. I don't know how to say his
Okay,
name.
that's
So
awesome.
he's local. Bramus is also local, but he's pretty well known. Bramus here. He does a lot of talks everywhere in the world. So these are the local
Awesome.
ones. I think Hamad Hassan. It's his
Yeah,
first talk in an international conference. He spoke in
incredible.
meetups before, but not in a conference. And also for Jonathan Guérin, it's not going to be his first talk in a conference because he's speaking at another conference just before us, but it will be his second or third.
Wow, this is what makes the BJS family of conferences so special. Like I was expecting only one first time or second or third, whatever, one early speaker, but that's so cool. Listen, Aymen, this has been so great. I learned a ton, and I learned a lot of ideas that I want to steal, and more importantly, I learned that I'm missing out on a special flavor of joy, the joy of making connections and watching people grow together. And I want to get more better at that. I also learned about just how you're so intentional about doing the hard thing, right? Getting like 50% at least diversity across gender and race and other lines. We talked about the nuances of creating a conference in places like Tunisia and really helping explode the bubble. And yes, while it's hard for some people to go there, it's even harder for people to come out. So, with all of that, on behalf of myself, all the listeners, thanks so much for coming and sharing all of this with us. I think it's going to do a lot for the community.
Thank you. Thank you a lot for having me. It was a great honor to be part of this podcast.
Thank you for joining my discussion with Aymen Ben Amor. I hope you feel empowered and inspired to organize or attend conferences. If you'd like to attend a conference, again, share this episode on social media and you'll enter a raffle to do that. If you'd like to speak at conferences, let me know in the comments and I'm more than happy to create an episode all about how to not just speak at conferences, but do it well. We'll also prioritize that because honestly, all of this is for you. If you're learning from and or enjoying this content, then a great way to support the channel at no cost is to subscribe on YouTube and like the video. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, then if you leave up to a 5-star review, that would also help folks discover the podcast. And really, that's why I do it, right? It's for you. If you have ideas for guests, topics, etc., leave a comment on YouTube, and I'll be sure to prioritize exactly what you want. Because ultimately, look, this is for you, and it's a labor of love, and I'm just happy to serve you however you want. So with that, thank you for being a part of the podcast. Thank you for listening, and most importantly, thank you for your interest in education and engineering.